Stony Island Audio.
And now, it's time for the Bod Rap Pod with your hosts, Demone Carter, David Ma, and Nate LeBlanc.
Three underground rap nerds walked into a bar. An argument ensued about who the GOATs are. The seed was a thought that would turn into a pod. Now fans worldwide say, not a bad job, the ad hoc gab squad who chronicles the vanguard of hip-hop at large. Rap taste slacked off, don't need to be mad, dog. Look no further, it's the Bod Rap Pod.
Podcasting live from San Jose, California. It is the Bod Rap Pod. My name is Demone Carter, aka Dem1. I'm joined by my man, David Ma. What's happening, bro?
Yo, good to see you guys.
Awesome. Good to have you here. He's like, and there's no further questions.
All right, you guys have a good one.
Leave meeting.
Love it. Also, Nate LeBlanc in the building. What's happening?
Hello, America. A few people in the UK and Canada.
We got I think we have I almost said Neanderthals. What do you call somebody from the Netherlands?
Whoa.
Not that.
That's why I said, let me play this out. That doesn't sound right.
Easy,
Netherlanders.
Nederlanders.
We have a couple Ned Flanders.
Sexy Flanders.
Yeah. Shout out to everybody around the world tapping into the Bod Rap Pod. We appreciate your continued patronage. And we are here today. We are gathered here today to talk about an album that I am on record of saying didn't think was going to come out, came out. We had a chance to digest it, think about it for a little bit. Nate LeBlanc, tell the people why we are not part of the hot take economy. Why did we sit on this for like 3 weeks?
Okay. First of all, we were busy that weekend. We went out of town on that weekend, so we didn't really have a chance to absorb it in the way we might otherwise have. Second of all, this is really, it's a lot of record. It's specifically a double record. I think this record would have benefited from the being released physically, or I guess me interacting with it physically and like thinking of the two halves as different records a little bit more than I do. It's just a playlist, right? Or like it's just lines on a screen. So I was actually sitting here kind of listening to it as a prep for today, and I was like, oh, this is where it ends. I didn't realize that.
Oh, and then the other part starts.
To it. And so it ends with the Ghostface and Summer Walker song. Like that's the end of album one.
Okay.
And then so that's Mr. Morale, I suppose. And then the Big Steppers come. And so it'd be interesting to think of them as more like different things. It just sound like one big, long, jumbly, emotional thing to me when I first took it in. So we just needed some time to sit with it. And I think we gave ourselves some time to sit with it. We're not so worried about being current or like having the freshest take on release day. We'll do that for things more in our world, but for a big record like this that's long and complicated, I think we wanted to take our time and generate some thoughts before we talked, and I'm happy we did, honestly.
Yeah, it's always good to actually take time to absorb music. That's so passé these days, but we are grateful to have the kind of time. And so let's get into it. I asked the bros to highlight a track. Let's start there. Highlight a track off this album that really struck you, either good or bad. And with that, I am dying to know what Dave has to say about We Cry Together. I listen to songs, Dave, just so you know. Let me give you a preamble. I listen to songs sometimes and be like, I wonder what Dave thinks about this. Especially when they're singing.
That song specifically, We Cry Together. I think it also means that the audience who's listening is crying while you're listening. While you're listening. I like the album. I felt like it was an event. You know what I mean? I think people aren't really discussing it because there's just so much to unpack. The album is about trauma, societal and personal. So the track We Cry Together, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, is produced by Alchemist. So I think the track exemplifies this. Not because it's my favorite song or anything, but it shows how emotional the album is. And the song is messy, it's back and forth. It's not something you want to you want to re-listen to. It's like watching Schindler's List or something. It's brilliant, but you don't want to return to that headspace. You know what I mean? And the song is messy because relationships are messy. So I really thought they did a killer job of just banging your head on the subject matter. And at this point, I think Kendrick is a catalog artist. So every new release, you're kind of seeing where it fits into the pantheon of his body of work. You know what I mean? So if you want an ensemble jazz album where his voice is the lead instrument, that's To Pimp a Butterfly. You want him to bar the fuck out, that's Damn. And so this is just like, I mean, I hate using this word, but it's like a cinematic album of just trauma and emotion. So like I said, there's a lot to unpack, and I think We Cry Together totally exemplifies it.
It was traumatic for me to listen to, I'll tell you that.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a banger. It's not like you're trying to bump it on a car ride,
Totally. I don't know if you guys have seen it. This tweet goes viral every few weeks or so. They're like, right when the people pull up at the stoplight, I'm listening to a podcast.
Exactly.
It used to be a trope in movies, like people would be like banging their music. Now it's like next on NPR.
Oh my God, the lamest.
Yeah. You and I have talked about this off air, Dave, and
yes.
I appreciate your take, and I think it is so interesting to think of it in the Kendrick cinematic universe. But like, I did not enjoy listening to this song, and I do not ever plan on listening to this. This is Kendrick's Edward Albee play. This is like whatever happened to Virginia Woolf, like compressed down into a rap song, if you want to call it that. I find it very hard to listen to, and I think it's one of the two songs where I'm like, I'm not in a huge hurry to go back and listen to this album and take it all in, because like, I mean, I have enough of my own problems. Like, I don't really need to like dip into this marital strife at this moment, but the way that it's constructed, I completely agree, is very cinematic, very real. And it was actually funny. We talked about this at like kind of a social gathering, and half the people were like, I don't get it. Why does it end with the couple having sex? And the people who've been married for a long time go like, I don't know if you know this, but that's how life is. So
exactly.
That's what happened. And that was like a real crystallization that like Kendrick has tapped into something here. And I think some people conduct their relationships where they let it fly and they let the emotions out and they really go at each other, and then they have Congress, if you will. And some people repress things and, sleep on the couch that night or whatever. You know what I mean?
Miss out on makeup sex.
Yeah,
there's two camps of folks there. I heard We Cry Together, and I was really intrigued for like 90 seconds to about 2 minutes. I felt like, yes, I get the concept. I see what y'all doing. This is well put together. In a weird, bizarre way, it reminds me of when E40 would do the back and forth with, I think her name was like Sally Stacker Grip, and they would go back and forth like trading insults. I think that's on Holly Game or one of those records. And so as it kind of worked for me as like a skit, but then they really just all the crying, right? Which is real, because as anybody in a relationship knows, that like the argument is never succinct or as brief as you might want it to be. So it's kind of unflinching, and like after a while it was hard for me to keep tapping in. But I will say this, I heard the beat, of course it's Alchemist. I wanted to hear Ghostface on that beat. I think the Summer Walker jam is cool. It's cool. I'm glad Ghostface was included, but when the beat dropped, I was like, I kind of misread it, and I was like, oh, this has to be the track with Ghostface, and like it wasn't. And it was a screaming, crying argument too soon.
What if Ghostface played the marriage counselor? Did you guys ever listen to that thing? It came with his book, I think, or it came out around one of his albums where he just like gives advice, and he's talking about like the ramen noodles and stuff, like The World According to Pretty Tony. I really need to re-listen to that. Like me, when I used to live with my DJ bros, we would listen to that all the time and like quote it and stuff. Like
I totally remember that.
That era of Ghostface should be the marriage counselor. We're just re-executive producing the album.
Ghostface as the marriage counselor. That would be not only a great song, like I'd watch 13 episodes of that. Just different people bringing their problems to Big Ghost. All right, Nate, what track did you want to highlight?
All right. I think I'm pronouncing this right. I don't see any other way to say it, unless it's just that line thing that separates things. But I believe the track is called Mother I Sober. And it's the penultimate song on the second record. And mainly the reason that I wanted to bring it up is I think it's kind of the emotional conclusion of the record. It leaves it in a pretty dark place. And also, like, what a huge flex to get Beth Gibbons
totally
on a rap song. It's not like the soaring, Live at Roseland, depths of the soul Beth Gibbons. It's kind of a quiet, hushed, older Beth Gibbons. I have no idea if that was cut down from tons of minutes, whether she recorded over this beat. We'll have to wait for the documentary, find out how this went down. But she's such an important voice. Portishead is such important music. It's very cool to see Kendrick reach back for that. Like, I think slightly differently because of the geography, but kind of like how he reached for a DJ Quick on Good Kid, Mad City. It's like, show people where this comes from a little bit.
Or Kid Capri on Damn.
And him having Ghostface plays a similar role. And I'm thinking about this a little bit differently because my nephew is really into this record. And him and I have been texting about it a little bit, and we talked about it a little bit at a family function, and we're actually going to go see Kendrick together.
Hey,
I got tickets for us to go in August, so I'm really wondering if my perceptions of the album are going to change seeing it perform, because, like, how do you perform something like this?
Totally.
Like, is he bringing the actress from Zola on the tour, and he's going to argue with her every night? Like, I don't know. So, I think this, if you like, we're assigned to this record as homework, as we kind of assigned it to ourselves this week as homework, and you needed to get the cliff notes of what the entire record is about, you could listen to these 6 minutes and 43 seconds and kind of get the ideas of what Dave already really brilliantly laid out, of like both the emotional and personal and cyclical family traumas that Kendrick is dealing with. And I really think he felt, and this is a little bit, armchair psychology, I think he felt people were putting him up too much on a pedestal, and he really wanted to show people how human he is and how many foibles he has. And that is at work in this as well. So interesting song. And again, just huge executive production flex.
Absolutely. Dave, what were your thoughts? Dave, you sober?
Barely. California sober.
Yeah, exactly.
I loved it, and what a pleasant surprise to hear Beth Gibbons. You know what I mean? She always has such a symmetry to her vocals. I'm not sure if that's the accurate description, but that's how I feel. And it was perfect. And like Nate said, I thought it was an awesome flex to have her. And it's not like he chose, I don't know, so some other vocalist. It's like he chose fucking Portishead Beth Gibbons, who brings this like somber, feel to everything. So I thought it was a perfect sort of undertone to everything. Yeah,
it was to my eye and ear a great get. You know what I mean? It's something that even on a track list you're like,
totally.
He's that hip. He understands how cool it would be to have. With that being said, I was a little bit like, oh, where's the Beth Gibbons? Like,
Mother I somber.
Yeah, exactly. It was like got her to murmur a little bit. It was all right. But yeah, definitely kind of that emotional crescendo. And I think the movie analogy is apt, Dave, in the sense that like, yeah, it kind of like when it did end, I kind of like exhaled. Like, whew, all right.
I mean, it's supposed to be a tough listen. You know what I mean? So it just means it's effective.
Mission accomplished. I think I would say this about any double album, but the first time I listened to it, I was relieved when it was over.
Totally.
I was like, okay, like I need to like clear my head. I need to like listen to something totally different now. Like I need to absorb this. Like it's nice for someone to like, we talked about this a little bit. I think Demone a couple episodes ago, we did something on the Heart Part 5 song briefly before the record had dropped, and it's like to see the world come to a screeching halt to take in this record by this person is really fascinating. I mean, it's I'm gonna say some kind of mean things about it in a minute, but like this is really high level, well made, well crafted hip hop music. It's deeply lyrical hip hop music. That's what we all love. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And but we'll get there. The track that I wanted to talk about, I'm actually going to pull Audible here. The track that I'm actually going to talk about is Worldwide Steppers, which early in the album, and kind of was the first track on the album that got me going, like, okay, now we're starting. Now it's going. This is what we're doing. We're into this now.
Like he left the therapist's office and he put on the radio in his car.
Yeah, exactly. He's kind of vibing out now. He's giving you kind of Kendrick flexing his high speed craft works on a track without drums. Really, I love how the sample is kind of RZA-esque, kind of guitar chop thing. It sounds like that moves the beat along. But Kendrick's voice is so percussive. As it is, I really like this track, and there were a couple of other tracks where he's just kind of rapping to piano, or he's just rapping over strings, and you're like, okay, this is a kind of a new and different direction for him, and showing that he's open to different types of palettes and things. So I thought Worldwide Steppers was like the first track, the closest thing to a bop that we're getting on this record. This is as close as you get to like King Kunta type energy on this record. And so it made me excited to kind of hear that. And then the album kind of doesn't necessarily really get back to that vibe so much, but I really like the song of Worldwide Steppers.
So how are you guys feeling about the album overall, or like where would you kind of put it in Kendrick's discography at this point?
I think I go back to Damn probably the most, because it's probably the filled with bops, as Demone would say. And it's not like a deeply emotional listen that like hurts your soul. But again, like I mentioned earlier, he's a catalog artist. So I mean, this is, I don't think it's his last album, but he's talking about retirement and stuff. But this would be quite the bookend.
Interesting.
Yeah. If you looked at it as one story and you'd
right.
leave this at this part of the story, you're like, damn, Kendrick's fucked up, man. He hasn't dealt with all this stuff, or he's dealing with it.
He's dealing with it. Right. He's in his rich guy problems phase, and I'm glad to see he's kind of leaning into it in the same way that Jay-Z did. You know what I mean? Like after a while, Jay-Z was like, it's about my fucking marriage.
Are you kind of making a 444 reference?
A little bit.
It's hard not to think about that when you listen to this, right?
Yeah, it's a rich guy with a complicated life, who has kind of a street background, but it's the furthest he is from Good Kid, Mad City is on this record. You know what I mean? And kind of like the legend of K. Dot and who he was. Now it's kind of this he's arrived, and can you continue to make interesting music once you've arrived? If you're Eminem, no, you can't. Like it left his body. But I will say this, and I do have quibbles, but I will say that I would put this record. I think I'll go back to it more than I do To Pimp a Butterfly, to be honest. I think this is what I will say, and I wasn't a huge fan of To Pimp a Butterfly, but I think he is getting more adept at making a concept record. Like this one, to me, the concepts felt more tangible and easier to follow than on To Pimp a Butterfly. And I'm like, he's kind of stepped up his, I don't know what you want to call it, his overall narrative game. And this would be an interesting last record. I don't buy it though. Yeah, I think he's definitely got more things to say, and I think this is like a start of a new chapter again, in the kind of Jay-Z reference of like once he turned the corner and it wasn't about a brick all the time, it started just being about his life. And Kendrick is kind of showing that he can be entertaining in that way, even if it was a lot.
Yeah, I think that's the point of it though. I mean, again.
Yeah, I just find myself not wanting to listen to it. Like, then I haven't really had that be the case with any of his other records, and partly maybe it's me just needing to like clear my headspace and not really deal with other people's big trauma right now. Like That's just not something that's really on my mind, where I'm like, oh, let me help Kendrick figure out his deal. It's just it's not like what I want to be listening to. And we've kind of avoided this up to this point, and I am going to bring it into the conversation. Like, I'm not saying it's a binary, and I'm not saying it's the only two records that matter, but I am listening to the Quelle Chris album that came out on the same day way more often, and
all kinds,
way more. So, I mean, I do think Death Fame is a better record for what it's worth. It's a totally different kind of record, but it gives us some levity. It's dealing with big issues as well, and it's coming at them from a totally different point of view. But
that's interesting.
That's just speaking to the kind of thing that I want to be listening to right now. And the Kendrick thing, I basically have to be like assigned.
Yeah, it felt like work. And it's, I mean, you didn't say that at the top, but I do feel part of the reason we didn't talk about it is because like it's work. Like you actually have to have some thought out takes and reasonings because he is such an important artist. And I was having this conversation with Dave on a Mama I Not Sober night. Was talking about like the danger for Kendrick. To me, the danger for Kendrick is to become so introspective and so self-important that you start to have like a Bono vibe. Like you're so fucking important. Of all the rappers, he has strong Bono potential.
That is so funny. If Kendrick starts wearing sunglasses inside, we got to tell him, dude.
Yeah, we're gonna have to come rescue him. And that's kind of, to me, it would be my main critique of this record. And I love the Death Fame analogy because rap has progressed to where you could tell complicated human narratives. Quelle Chris does it excellently on Death Fame, and I feel like Kendrick Lamar, part of his rubric is he's graded against people who are not on a Quelle Chris level. It's like,
that's true.
You know what I mean? He's graded against rappers who have very limited subject matter. So when he says anything, it's kind of like, everybody's like, oh my God, this is incredible. And it's like, it is. Also, Nady Blue is here. Also, Quelle Chris is here. I mean, there's other voices and ways to express a range of emotions. But of course, not at the level that Kendrick's doing it. I just hope that he's able to somehow navigate being the biggest fucking rapper in the world and not get into kind of a weird, he has a song called Savior where he's kind of like trying to take himself down a notch, which
survivor's remorse is a serious thing, and being the one successful person in your life, I'm sure is it must really fuck people up. Like I've had this thought a lot, and I feel like we've made this analogy quite a few times. It's kind of like emerging as like a theme of our season or our year so far is like rappers and boxers or fighters. We talked about this a lot with Juice. Like if you think about that in terms of Kendrick, it's like it's kind of like he has this insane skill that he can take anywhere. And I think on this one, he wants people to be like, but I'm still like Kenny from the block, for like lack of a better term. Like I have my own problems, and it's just hard to sympathize with a rich man's problems, kind of. You know what I mean? Like there's a point where everybody's like, cool, but you know,
you can afford therapy.
You can just Serge McDuck through those publishing checks, and we'll be over here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't quite feel the same way as with the Jay-Z. He's not as he's both not as rich and not as into putting the richness in your face. It's different. I don't know if you guys remember this story. I think about this when I think about Kendrick a lot. I think it was around the time of maybe Good Kid, Mad City, or maybe a little bit before that, when his sister graduated from high school or college or something. He gave her a Corolla.
Yeah, I remember that.
Thought it was weird. They're like, why wouldn't you give her like a Lamborghini or a Bentley or whatever? You're a rapper. And he's like, I'm not that kind of rapper. Like a Corolla is a perfect car for her, like in the neighborhood she lives in and with the tasks
very sensible
she needs to accomplish. And like he famously did not like move to Calabasas. Like I'm sure he has a bigger, better situation now. But when he first got what we call like rapper rich, he wasn't ostentatious about it. And I think we all make assumptions about people's bank accounts by their, level of fame. And he's, come up in a time where records don't sell and he doesn't tour a ton. So I actually don't know what his financial situation is, but I think it's very good that he has put this narrative about him going to therapy and trying to process things in front of all these millions of people.
Yeah.
And that said, for the last time, I kind of don't want to listen to it.
That's fair.
It's a challenging album, man. It's a challenging album.
It's a challenging album, and I'm not sure I'm really in the headspace to really deal with his shit right now.
I hear that.
It's just kind of like, let's just see what else is kind of floating through the universe. And so I don't know where I could put it in his discography, but not that high.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he has a very, very he has a hit riddled discography. He
really does. He really does. And I think the thing that I kind of miss a little bit is that sensibility I've been complaining about. There's no bops. But when I listened to it this last time before we hopped on, I said maybe there are bops, but the definition of a bop for him at this level is just so different. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, he's on a track with Summer Walker. Great.
Right.
Like,
But when you heard Humble, you didn't need to think about it.
no, I didn't.
Right, right.
Yeah.
When you heard King Kunta, you didn't need to think about it.
Yeah,
You know.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it was kind of automatic, and there's still a part of me. I think he's an amazing songwriter. He can be very potent and descriptive in making it like a cool ass little song. And so I just hope that never gets lost. It's part of the reason that Jay-Z can still be interesting and cool is like he'll give you introspective shit, but he'll just do like a little song. Like have fun on a fucking song once in a while. So we'll see. But I'm interested.
Rapping is amazing on this. I have no criticisms of any of the rapping. It's more about the subject matter and the overarching kind of thing of it. And again, if that's what he wants to do and he took 5 years to do it, I completely understand. He has every right to do it. If you listen to each verse and the way it's constructed, he still raps better than most people alive.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
No, totally.
It's
Top tier.
insane.
Yeah, totally. Top tier. So let's render verdicts and be held to them for time immemorial. Dave, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. Yeah, meh, nah.
Definite, yeah. One of the best albums of the year. And I think people are gonna look back on it and think the same.
Okay, Nate.
I have to give it a meh, and meh is not the right term. It's very interesting. It's not boring. I just don't see myself going back to it a lot. I think I could come up with 25 records that meant more to me this year by the time December rolls around very easily. I'm not sure if it'll be in that conversation for me, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm gonna be slightly more pessimistic than you. I tuck this one behind To Pimp a Butterfly and say I love when artists branch out and explore their creative potential. It doesn't mean I have to listen to it. So
that's true though.
So Kendrick is a top tier artist doing top tier things lyrically, and I think Dave, you made a great point when we were boozing and chatting about this record. Is for some folks this is gonna be an entry point. You know what I mean? And that I love that exists, right?
Mm-hmm. Imagine being a 16-year-old who just discovered Kendrick through this.
I don't have to imagine it. It's happening in my family. And he didn't discover Kendrick. He liked Damn as well. But to him, this is like an earth-shattering like masterpiece.
Totally.
So it's interesting. Yeah. But he's also never listened to Supreme Clientele, which is what his uncle told him should be his next homework assignment, right?
Right.
I was like, you should listen to Portishead and you should listen to Supreme Clientele. If you're liking this, see why Kendrick shows these things, and that's how you become a well-rounded music listener, right?
And in that sense, we have to say thanks, Kendrick. Like there's a lot of cheesier ways. I mean, one of his corollaries, J. Cole chooses to do much cheesier things with the platform and the attention span of new rap listeners. So from that perspective, I'll give it cool man. Cool Ranch. I'll give it Cool Ranch.
Give it Cool Ranch, no Dorito. Yeah, I think that's a meh. I think that averages out to a meh. You know how the Pitchfork editors have to decide what the number is based on the words below, and sometimes they seem to have no corollary. That a meh.
Okay. So there you have it. That was our review of Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. We appreciate your time, energy, and attention, but it only highlights the fact that as an artist in this day and age, releasing music is such a weird, I was going to call it a science, but it's not even that. It's some kind of artistry mixed with random luck, or at least that's what I thought until we talked to our next guest. Icon, the Mic King, who you may have heard of before for his MC exploits, and he does have a new record out. But in this interview, which he should have charged us for, and we should charge you, but we're not going to, he drops a lot of game about the new approach to releasing records and kind of how he does it. Super fascinating. I'm not going to step on it anymore. Let's cut to our interview with Icon, the Mic King, Dad Bod Rap Pod. Bod Rap Pod. Every week we talk to people who are moving and shaping hip hop culture. This week is no different. Joining us in Zoom, we have Mike King, formerly Icon, the Mike King. How's it going, man?
Chilling, man. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Dope. So I'm gonna start off with a somewhat personal question. My name is Demone. My rap name is Dem1. Is your government name Michael King?
It is.
Damn.
It is. Yeah, and the funny thing is, when I first started rapping, it didn't even immediately dawn on me like, hey, your name is Mike King. Because you don't want to use your real name. Like
Exactly.
The only real name rappers when I was young was like Eric Sermon and Keith Murray. And they were cool and all that. But I was like, yo, I want to be like Method Man. I gotta have like a superhero name. And the Icon, it actually came from there's a series of comic books, Milestone Comics, which was like it was like a Black-owned comic universe, and their Black Superman was called Icon. And I was like, yep, that's my name right there.
I see. But like all things, I think real nicknames kind of just stick to you.
Yeah.
And so at what point were you like, fuck it, I just gotta be Mike King. Like I gotta incorporate that.
Yeah. I mean, it was probably like a year or two after I came up with the Icon thing. And I was like, yo, your name is Mike King. Why don't you just be Icon the Mike King? And I was like, all right, cool, let's do that. Right. And like early when I first started like popping up on the indie rap scene, there was another guy who went by Icon, and then people would be like, why don't you just call yourself Mike King? And, just to be defiant, I was like, I'm not changing my name. Who are you to tell me what my name should be? But then, as I got older, I was like, all right, I'm too old to have a superhero rap name. Like, let's just use my real name.
I like how you made room, though. I think you should counsel rappers who are using Lil into be like, make some room for a transition into another phase. Talk to us about kind of what made you want to start rapping.
Yeah, so I very much have like a Fresh Prince of Bel-Air's like origin story. I'm originally from Philly. When I went to high school, my parents moved me out of Philly to Connecticut to go to like a private school. And, I just wanted to do things to make me feel connected to Philly still. And so I started out doing graffiti and breakdancing, and then I got into rhyming, and then I got into DJing too. And at a certain point, I felt like I could only be like really great at one of those things. And then ultimately I felt like rhyming was, my favorite of those things. And really, I brought up Method Man before, but like it was literally Takao that made me think I could rap. And, I just started freestyling and, I got good at it. Then eventually I became a writer. And then eventually, I ended up surrounding myself with other rappers and, being like, all right, well, y'all are better than me. I got to level up here, and just kept going like that until I started releasing records.
I was listening to some of your stuff today as prep, and I noticed like you're pretty fast. Like, then there was do you consider yourself to be a fast rapper, or is your thing like, what do you consider your like style to be? I guess let me ask you rather than tell you what I think.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I was faster before. This is actually slower for me. Like I think the music I'm making now is like I have far more control over what's happening, because before I just had so much to say. I had so many bars I wanted to get out. I wanted to be so impressive. And so my bars were like super full. Now the newer records, like I'm playing with pauses a lot more, like using a lot more negative space in there and things like that. So I think, I've really gotten to a point where, I very much know what I'm doing, what my voice sounds good with, how to like have a flow that isn't overpowering the beat, and just kind of having like a good mashup between what I'm doing and what the music is doing.
Yeah, a great answer. Thank you. You mentioned earlier you had kind of like gotten with some other MCs and that kind of forced you to level up. Can you talk a little bit about your peer group? Like who were you talking about when you said that?
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys are familiar with Chesky Ramos, but he and I went to high school together. We've been like friends since we were like 14. And no one else in our school rapped. And so he was just doing like rock music at the time. And he was the first one to bring me to the studio. But at some point I was like, yo, you should rap. And so I kind of got him in a rhyme, and he'll tell you this too. He'll be like, yeah, Mike taught me how to rap or whatever. But it wasn't until we both went away to college that we both like really grew into, you know, the prototypes of the rappers that we became. And so for me, I went to Howard University, and there's no shortage of rappers at Howard. In fact, you know, we had like a school sponsored battle called Verbal Armageddon. And like, I'm walking up in there like, yeah, I'm the best rapper. Da, da, da. And, you know, we have like this whole audition thing. And so it's like 30 rappers in the whole thing. And I was ranked number 14. I was like, what? How dare you, right? And, you know, that year I battled my guy Perfecto, who ultimately ends up winning the whole thing. And Howard Homecoming is like a legendary thing, like an event. And they had the second round of the battle at Yard Fest at Homecoming, which is like the main event. And so, you know, the battle was like sandwiched between performances by like Breeze Everflowing and C-Rays and Mos Def and Pharoah Monch, because this is like when Internal Affairs and Black on Both Sides dropped and everything. And I'm like, damn, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna kill this dude. Yo, I got murdered. Like the worst battle loss I've ever experienced. And at that moment, I was like, all right, I gotta level it up. And so really, it was largely, you know, just being around a community of rappers that could actually rap. And I was like, yo, next year, like I gotta come back and just be on some other shit. And so the next year I came in and I was ranked third because both the champ and the runner-up were automatically 1 and 2. And then I won that year. So like, that's what I'm saying. I just needed to be around other rappers and have like a measuring stick. Cause I was a dude that was like freestyling at all times. Like it was annoying. You know what I mean? Like I just like always wanted to rhyme.
Big of you that you can admit that now.
Yeah, of course,
we've all been around that dude.
Like I just
in the club, over the music in your ear. Yes.
Yeah. Like I was walking around with a boombox. So like if I wasn't rapping over some beats from like, you know, No from Cunning Linguist or somebody like that, I was bumping like Labor Days by Aesop or bumping like Internal Affairs or whatever, right? And, you know, I just needed to be in a community of rappers where I could like continually be rapping with people and, you know, just having more of a feedback loop. And so ultimately just doing it at Howard wasn't enough for me. So I ended up, you know, coming to New York regularly, like battling there, meeting a lot of people like, you know, Tone Deaf and PH, rest in peace, and, you know, all those types of people. And I just got involved in the battle scene that way. So, yeah, I mean, you asked me about contemporaries, but, you know, again, it was a lot of the people I went to school with at Howard. And then it was a lot of like the New York City underground, like Minnie Styles, goes by I Am Minnie now. You know, I battled Jen like 14 times. You know, like I was very ingrained in that. And then there was something called Brainstorm out in Seattle. It was like the first battle with like a $3,000 prize. And so I flew out there for that. I got second place. And, you know, I just made a lot of friends along the way. Because also, you know, while I was at Howard, one of my friends at Howard, his name is Amal, he actually grew up with Slug. And so he was the one that was like putting us on to like Atmosphere Records and Aesop and all this. And then, you know, Atmosphere had a show at University of Maryland. So I meet them. And then they were out there at Brainstorm. So it was real cool to me. So it was just like a really organic thing that just grew out of me wanting to be, you know, the best rapper I could.
Yeah, I could definitely, having known you for all of 12 minutes, I could tell that you're like super competitive. Like I get that vibe. Yeah. Which is a common trait amongst like the battle MC crowd. So how did you kind of make that transition? Not all the battle rappers can then go on to release a stream of like recorded music that is also entertaining. I'll just say that being nice.
Yeah.
How did you make that transition? And was that like a conscious thing? We talked to Wordsworth a couple of weeks ago, and he was like, there was a point in my career where I stopped trying to bar out and I started trying to write songs. I'm paraphrasing, but how was that transition for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was actually easier than most because I started from making songs. Like I had to figure out how to make the way I rap work for battling, you know what I mean? So like it wasn't that hard to unravel, but at the same time, you know, like that will to impress people with bars is still there, just kind of in a different way. Like I still got punchlines in my rhymes and all that, but you know, it's more like, how do I tell a cohesive story? Like I'm typically not just gonna, like you just said, like bar out for no reason. There has to be at least some sort of like overarching concept to it. So as an example, on Iconic, I have this song called Rainmaker, and it's effectively like a punchline song about being good at sales, you know what I mean? And like I'm flipping all those like corny phrases that people say in business, like, you know, circle back and 10,000 foot view and all that bullshit. I'm like, all right, well, how can I make this dope, like as a verse? So there has to be some aspect of it that, you know, even if you don't listen to rap to catch the double entendres or anything like that, it still has to be an enjoyable, interesting song. And so, you know, I've always tried to maintain that balance of being, you know, both like interesting, I don't want to say catchy, but like, you know, it tells some sort of cohesive story to it, even if it's just like talking about how dope I am.
Right on. This sounds weird to say out loud, but I think you will accept the compliment in the spirit that it's given. You have the best rapper website I've ever seen. Like your website is so much better than the other ones we look at when we're just poking around for this stuff. So props for that. But there's a section on it called Manifesto, and you know I had to click that. It appears, I honestly couldn't tell, so please tell me. You're sort of saying you're the best rapper ever, and then you're like, we're searching for the best rapper ever. Like, talk to me about this concept and what are you doing with this? Sounds super interesting.
Yeah, so the website that we're building is called bestrapperever.com, and what I'm trying to build is something that's kind of like 538 meets like Complex. And the idea is that I want to quantify what it means to be the best rapper ever. So yes, I do feel as though I'm the best rapper ever because I do what I like better than anyone else. And I've never understood when there's other rappers that like take offense to that or, you know, don't feel the same way. Like if someone else does what you like better than you do, why do you rap? I don't understand. Like, why are you taking up this space? But yeah, ultimately we're just trying to use like data science to really dig into the different features of what a good rapper and good rap is. So we can like, you know, plug a bunch of data in and say, okay, you know, new Drake album dropped. Is he still the best? You know, if you feel he's the best. And I think that there needs to be multiple levels or multiple ways you look at it, because, you know, you can look at it like, okay, who's the best based on lyrical content? Who's the best based on flow? Who's the best based on, you know, different like commercial measures? Because of course you're going to look at like how Jay-Z does, how Drake does, different than how A$AP Rock does and how, you know, Graph does or someone like that. And so I just want to get to a point where we can quantify that by using things like, you know, streams, you know, how often or how much of your song is actually listened to, the composition of your lyrics based on like natural language processing things. So just a variety of different components. There was a really cool, you know, data journalism piece that I saw a few years back. It was like, who has the largest vocabulary in hip hop? And then there was another
website,
component.
The Pudding, does that,
Yeah,
and they've done a couple of different iterations of it. We're super into that. Yeah,
exactly. And then
Very
there's another one in there where they talk about, based on similarity of lyrics, who is most similar to other rappers. So like, for instance, if you go to that and you click on Cannabis, it says the most similar rapper is Eminem. neither one of them want to hear that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And we don't want to hear either one of them. So, so it all works.
So I think there's just some really interesting things that we can uncover using data. And, you know, at the very least, we at least come up with some cool stories around that.
Nice.
All right,
Yeah,
all right.
I don't know if you're sorry, Demone, just one last thing. Like they people will do lyrical breakdowns where they show where the internal and external rhymes are, and they kind of code the rhymes in those. Is that kind of heading in the direction that you're talking about too?
So that's something that I want to do as well. Like I really like the idea of rappers interviewing other rappers about their technique. And I saw a guy, I think his name was Reggie or something like that, where he interviewed Royce, and he was like showing them screen shares of like, here's your rhymes color coded. And, you know, someone that raps like Royce, like he has to obviously be super aware of what he's doing. Like you can't do that by accident the way that he does it. So it's really cool to see how other people think about it, right? Because like there was this interview that Elzai did that I saw once where he has that verse where he's like, here's how you rap, you know. It's kind of funny because he's like, whatever, you've seen it. But he's like, yeah, I got letter boxes, I got typewriters, I got da-da-da, like, because they in Detroit, they got all this, you know, terminology for how you do this shit. Because like everyone out there compounds, that's what I call it, like the syllable shit. And so I'm like, yo, what's a letterbox? Like what do you mean by that? And then, you know, to hear him further explain it, the way he defines certain things, I'm like, because he's like, yeah, that's a 2 pattern. And I'm like, no, that's not. Like, you know what I'm saying? So there's no common lexicon about how you talk about these things. So I think it would be really cool as part of what we do that we like come up with the definitions and like that becomes how we talk about these things.
That's super fascinating. It reminds me of like Madden rating and how players get all in a bunch about their Madden rating. So I'm gonna offer up. We got 3 people here who know a lot about rap and are well versed in the West Coast styles. My only concern about a thing like that is that rap traditionally has a great East Coast chauvinism in the sense that when you say what is flow, right? There are some who would say that flow has a particular definition that I would go, that's an East Coast version of what flow is. And so fascinated by this project, and I hope to see some of its fruits. And you know, you got our emails. So
well, I think you have a great point, and I don't want to stop you from moving on to your next point because I know we got limited time.
No, go ahead.
But I actually agree with you because, you know, there's a lot of things, especially that came from the West Coast. Like when you think about your freestyle fellowships and your Project Blowed and so on, like those people always had very interesting, intricate flows. Like they were rapping in triple time before it was cool. You know what I mean? Like there's so many different things that I don't think have been respected enough for the contribution. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, we can go obviously as far back as, again, like Freestyle Fellowship and everything, but then also look at like the later generations, like the No Can Do's, or excuse me, All City Jimmies of the world, and, you know, Dumbfound Dead, like all those guys that came up and then, you know, were able to combine that with like really raw lyrics, you know what I'm saying? And that's not to say that the old head West Coast dudes didn't have great lyrics, but like they weren't doing what No Can Do is doing, you know what I'm saying? And so I think that there's a huge, I mean, they're getting more love now, but like I feel like you said, there is a big East Coast bias, and in this project we're trying to like eliminate that by making it very data driven.
Yeah. One last thing. If you're thinking about your model, I want to make sure that it's not just, you know, just my opinion, obviously. It's not just rewarding the most flows, the most lyrics, right? Like I think about a Ka or a Rock Marciano, like that kind of like understated talk rapping style is also extremely innovative. And how do you account statistically for the like perfection of a Ka verse?
You know what I mean? Like I feel like he would
I
rank
get you.
pretty low in a numerical system, but for listenability,
Interesting.
it's like you're like, yeah, but it was perfect. Like the 16 he did was a diamond. You know what I mean?
No, I agree with that. And I think that for this to work, we can't just look at it quantitatively. There has to be some sort of qualitative measures too. So I suspect what we're going to have to do is like develop a panel of people like y'all that are basically like, you know, the feedback loop, because
Yeah.
we could run, you know, like some cannabis bars from like post 97 cannabis bars that are like, on paper this sounds cool, but like
Yeah.
when you listen to it, like I don't want to hear your rap dissertation, fam. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's no disrespect to cannabis, because you know he was one of my favorites growing up. But yeah, I think there needs to be a qualitative element of it in order to, you know, make it really work.
Yeah.
Super interesting work that you're doing. I think that's fascinating. And what it's come to mind to me several times is Cool Mo D's rap report card that went viral again a couple months ago. Those of us who follow Ego Trip closely knew about it before, and just from listening to Cool Mo D, but to see it go out again and see how he did the categories and where people ranked. It's like essentially that's what you're kind of doing, and it's trying to assign numerical value to something inherently subjective, which has its things. But yeah, man, what if you became the Nate Silver of
rap game? Nate Silver,
rap surveying. That would be very interesting. An interesting
way
to
sell
take
it to
this.
him.
Totally.
Well, on that tip, I wanted to ask you, we talked about your website. I love this idea, the greatest rapper ever. You have an approach to marketing and selling yourself and your product that does actually kind of set you apart from most rappers. Can you talk a little bit about that and kind of how that's helped you sustain in the indie rap space?
Yeah, so, you know, just to give a little more context on that, I hadn't put out a record in 12 years because I kind of stepped into this marketing world and like I was doing all the same things I was doing in rap, but they were working and people were paying me for them. And so, you know, 8 years ago, I started my own marketing agency. We primarily do SEO search engine optimization and content marketing and machine learning projects. And so as I've come back to this, you know, there's just a lot I've learned from that world that I'm just applying to what I do in indie rap. And so the thing is that we're living in this like grand convergence, right? Like everything is digital now. Everything is the internet now, like the music industry, the internet, the film industry, you know, like everything is here. And so what people do in those different worlds are the same thing I do for my clients. And it's like, all right, well, I'm not interested in signing to a record label because one of the major record labels is one of my clients and I get to see what it is that they do. So we can just replicate that for me. You see what I'm saying? And so, you know, I also know from the type of marketing that I do for a lot of these businesses, like what works, what doesn't, how to think about things. And so as I've like surveyed the marketplace coming back into here and then watching like what this is all about, you know, it's largely about how do I look like people care about what I'm doing, even if they don't actually care about what I'm doing, right? Like, so how do I make it look like I'm getting millions of streams? How do I make it look like, you know, people are following me when like it's all bots? Like, so I'm like, all right, let's not do that. Cause I've played around and I've tested some of that. Cause like that's like, you know, you get those spikes, they're short-lived and then you still have no fans. Like, why are you doing that?
You got 10,000 followers and 2 likes.
Exactly. And so rather than doing that, why don't you take an actual marketing approach where you're building effectively like a marketing funnel? So like right now, I have a brand awareness problem. How do we solve that? Advertising and PR and things like that, you know? So, you know, we're running all the ads. We're going to do like the Times Square billboard and all that. And that's the thing. So I say that sounds impressive. Like, oh my God, he's going to have a Times Square billboard. What people don't know is you can book that for an hour for $500, get your picture, put it on Instagram. Now you look super official.
That explains a lot about some pictures that I've seen in the last
year.
year.
You just told a lot right there. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So what I'm trying to do is like, all right, instead of just faking it, why don't we like build this whole process out where it's like, cool, let's put the right things in front of the right people that this will resonate with, and then, you know, turn those people into followers, turn them into subscribers to the mailing list, and then just keep hitting them with content. Because that's what people keep telling you in music. They're like, yo, you got to put out a song, you know, keep putting out songs. You don't have to do that. You have to keep putting out content. So how do you turn that one song into 10 pieces of content and then roll those out over time, so it's not the heavy burden on you to have to put out a song every week? Like, I can't do that. You know what I mean? It's been 12 years since I put out an EP. Like, I can't put out all that stuff. So, you know, what I would rather do is just like roll out this content more effectively and then use that to build the audience. So, you know, I've got this EP, it's 9 songs. I got a video for every song. We're slicing and dicing the content in a variety of different ways. Like, you know, for Instagram, every video, I give snippets, like 8-bar snippets of the video, drop that over time. And then, excuse me, I have a song called Build, which largely talks about my journey as an entrepreneur. And so on the back of that, what I'm doing is I'm just doing these like short videos with other entrepreneurs, and I'm asking them 3 questions. I'm like, yo, what are you building? What did you wish you knew before you started? And then what's a bar in my song that resonated with you in your experience? So now I have 70 videos that I can chop up in 50 different ways from the one song that promotes the song. And so my whole point here is that it doesn't have to be as difficult as people are making it sound. You just got to use everything as an asset. And then the 2 other points I want to make. My apologies for being long.
No, please.
Keep going. Please.
One thing is that the way that we release music doesn't really make sense anymore, because everyone is like, okay, drop it on Friday. First of all, why are you going to drop on Friday when everybody's dropping on Friday? That's not smart.
Right.
Secondly, you know, we're still in this mindset like, okay, you got to get it done 3 months in advance and then turn it into this person and da-da-da. No, you don't have to do that. Because one, if you have a fan base that really wants it right away, they'll take it in whatever form it's in. And so with my EP, we actually released it. My goal was to release something I was proud of before I turned 40. And I literally dropped it on the night before my birthday at 11:59 p.m. And so we put it on Bandcamp. None of the features were done. I was just like, yo, this is a fine record the way it is. It's my minimum viable product, to speak in like, you know, software terminology. And then what I did is I just kept updating it. So what that did was create more opportunities for people to want to check it out again. And then once it was complete, now it's on all the DSPs. And now we're doing like a formal rollout. But I basically was able to build, you know, some momentum going into it by exposing people to it early, and then, you know, kind of like having a built-in fan base for it. And then the last point I want to make is that we still think about things as though the release time period is the only time to promote something. That actually doesn't make any sense, because your music is available to everybody in the world at all times. They're not all going to discover it at once. And when they
especially not if you drop it on Friday.
Exactly. and when they do discover it, it's going to be new to them. So it doesn't matter if it's been out for 2 years and they just found it. So keep promoting it like it's brand new. You know what I mean? Like, we always talk about how do you build your social media calendars and all of that. Cool. Everything that you use for that first record, keep putting that in the queue when you're promoting the second record, because the people that discover you off the second record are going to be interested in all the other stuff in your catalog. So stop thinking about it like, oh, this release is out, it's done, that promotion is over. Just keep promoting it forever, because you're going to continue to get value out of it.
Oh, we have to end the interview now. I have 215 old podcasts to market.
Exactly.
Man, such a pleasure to talk to you. We learn a lot about hip hop on these things. We don't usually learn that much about marketing. Super appreciate your viewpoint. And like, let's not get it twisted. Like, you can really rap. Like, I listened to a lot of your music today, and none of this would be as interesting to us if you weren't like a serious artist. So, respect.
I got bars.
You do.
Yeah, that's.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. You know, whenever when the best rapper ever gets when you get your advisory board together,
I'll holler at you, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Think about us, and yeah, everybody go check out the new iconic EP that is out right now. Best rapper ever on Bandcamp. Mike King, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. For anyone that hasn't checked out the records, featuring Music Soul Child, Little Fame from MOP, and it's all bangers produced by my dude Trox. I appreciate everybody for taking the time to look at me, and yeah, check it out.
Right on. Thanks, man.
All right, y'all. Appreciate it.
Peace.
Peace. All right, that was our conversation with Icon the Mike King. Icon the Marketing King?
He was spitting game, dude. That was our first interview that was more of a seminar totally. than a kind of rap interview. He's a nice guy. He's a cool guy. Very interesting take. I did listen to some of his music while we were doing research, and he can really rhyme, and it was cool to hear his stories about the olden days. But it was like for us, it was like, oh man, you're right. We really we got to change the way we think about our content. And
totally
using the term content, but this was fully the kind of interview that was about content. You know what I mean?
Oh, totally. The whole time he was talking, I was like, oh yeah. And you know what? Yep. Oh, that too. Yes.
I mean, I'm not embarrassed to say, like, he said it as a bad idea, but I was like, if we go to New York, I'm gonna buy a billboard thing in Times Square for $500 and go stand underneath it and take a picture. Like,
for
if
sure.
you guys see that, we're doing that. Like,
oh no, that's happening. Like, that is actually happening.
I have a mental Rolodex of rappers who have done that. And now that I understand what it is, it's not as big of a deal. But you know what? It is a big deal.
It's still a big deal because here's the thing. And one of my friend mentors, shout out to Jerry the Hermit, he would always go, "You're just painting pictures. It doesn't matter how real it is. It's do people feel like it's real?" And I think Icon the Mike King's approach to marketing and also the releasing of his music, it's really taking control of your own myth, right? And I think for underground MCs especially, who a lot of times concentrate on being real, I think it's very interesting and refreshing to hear from his perspective on how to do this shit and how to paint pictures, how to create your own mythology, which he's definitely done, and just super cool cat to chat with. So we appreciate
totally. It's super interesting to me that his name is Mike King, and it took him
That's
25 years to figure out that he had a rap name just given. I don't think I took the time to make this stupid joke, but it always reminds me. I've probably said this on the podcast before. Forgive me, early listeners. Gucci Man's name is Radrick Davis. And if he had been born like 20 years earlier, he would have been like MC Rad Rick.
Oh, totally. Rad Rick. I'm here for that. I
would have been like a booty bass, that he was in Miami. It's just like Atlanta.
Rick with 2 Ks.
I get it.
Yeah, 2 Ks. And I like that he too struggled with just accepting that as a name, because rappers are hard-headed that way. But yeah, I want to thank him for coming on. Definitely going to keep an eye out for his new material. As you know, you can connect with us on Twitter at Bod Rap Pod. You can connect with us on Instagram at Bod Rap Pod. What y'all need to do, though, you remember that Cat Williams joke about the weed? Like, this shit right here, this Patreon shit. You guys,
is that where that comes from? Because I've heard people like say that and like reference that. So
yeah, it's a hilarious Cat Williams bit about the weed man trying to like convince him this new shit is just killed. It's like, this shit is called death. Cat Williams does it a lot better. Please Google it. But yeah, we've got the Patreon happening for just $5 a month. You get access to a bunch of wild ass content. Like it's pouring out of us right now. If you were to subscribe to Patreon today, you would have hours and hours of playlists that you could access. You would be able to get Nate's mix show, The Fly Sporadic. There's a new video segment.
Dude, I have been dying to tell you this. No, the
Fly Sporadic. Nate's mix show.
Fly Sporadic. Yeah.
All right. I think it's like Lucky. I think it's like Lucky's, right? It's actually Lucky, the store.
Yes.
But we call it Lucky's.
Yes. Millions of people know about Lucky's. Like 10 of us know about this. So it's just it's also Dad Bod Rap Pod, but that's a whole nother conversation. And it's 4 separate words. I just happen to care about things like this, you know.
Sammy Semantics is back, y'all. Fly Sporadic FS Nick show is on there on our Patreon. It's $5 a month minimum. You can do more if you want, or you could subscribe to the whole year and get 15% off, which a lot of folks have been doing of late, which we really appreciate. And also in that space, we do a lot of interaction. I post questions, comments. I'm officially low-key too good for Twitter now, so I'll be connecting with folks more readily on the Patreon. And yeah, so it's a good time. We invite you to tap in to that space. Yeah, you know what it is. It's the Dad Bod Rap Pod.
Stony Island audio.
Thanks for watching that, and if you dug that, leave a thumbs up and say what up in the comments, and make sure to subscribe to Stony Island Audio for more.